Happy Monday, everyone. It's Matt Norlander with the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Yes, it's just me to start here. GP Gary Parrish, he is overseas. He is on vacation. Hope everyone had a good weekend here. It will not just be me for this episode. We're going to bring in Travis Branham from 247 Sports. The July live period is just about wrapped up here, and there's a lot to get to. So we got some good response after having Adam Finkelstein on a week ago, and more has transpired. So after the break, we're going to get into a lot of the stuff with the Nightrydas winning the Peach Jam. They're led by Cameron Boozer, the Boozer twins, beating AJ Dybantsa and Tyran Stokes of Oakland Soldiers. But there's even more. So the big week in the Peach Jam will kind of lead that. But I do want to get onto some other stuff with recruits to know, guys who kind of had some big Julys. And so we'll get into some of the nuance with all that. But coming off a weekend here, we wanted to give you at least one semi-regular episode. We do have, just a heads up, we have summer shoot-around episodes coming from now, starting basically tomorrow. Nada, you can turn on your mic real quick here, buddy. First summer shoot-around, that's going to go up on Tuesday morning, right? That's the plan here?
Tuesday morning in your podcast, because we respect the OG podcast listeners. They'll get it at 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, starting with Kansas.
That's right, buddy. Kansas is going to be tomorrow, and then we'll have another one later this week. We'll have probably 2 per week, and then we're going to hit a lull here with the news cycle in college hoops because naturally it happens at this point. So summer shoot-around episodes are going to be the dominant thing in the feed for most of the next 5 to 6 weeks. We will absolutely get you some regular episodes as news dictates. We're also in the process of doing our annual polling for the Candid Coaches series. So I've already started taking up coaches on that, and the results of those questions, those will be coming in August, and then we always usually build an episode or 2 around those. So keep that in mind as well. But you're going to have the Olympics coming, and oh, by the way, if you're into the Olympics, I do column writing for CBS Sports every time we hit up the Olympics. So I'll still be here with the pod, but we'll pivot some here for the next 2.5 weeks writing about Olympic stuff. So keep that in mind. There's just going to be stuff that overtakes college basketball even more so than normal with an Olympics year, and the news cycle, barring the unexpected, will close. That being said, before we get to Travis after the break, a few quick notes here on college hoops. ACC Media Days are about to happen on the football side. Pete Thamel reported, I had heard something similar to this, but he did report it, so credit to him and share this. He said, have been told by multiple sources that there's no expectation for Florida State or Clemson to notify the ACC they intend to leave by the August 15th deadline to depart the upcoming year. That's the deadline to declare intentions to exit for the 25-26 year. And quote, just means that with the expected eventual departure, one way or the other, if it happens, of Florida State and Clemson, at minimum, we have 2 more seasons with those schools in that conference, and heck, it could be even more with all of the grant of rights stuff. But that has been obviously a pressure point, a high point of anxiety with the ACC and what would happen there. Will they go to the Big 12? You know, Greg Sankey, in effect, said he wasn't really interested recently, specifically with Florida State. But at least good to know on that end. It only impacts basketball in terms of if and when they leave those schools, obviously following suit to a new conference. But I don't think anyone truly really knows what's going to happen on the ACC side. There is some general, look around, is the ACC going to meet the fate of the Pac-12? I mentioned this on a recent show. That just won't happen because you can't have 26 teams in a conference. I mean, you can try it, see how that goes for you. But the ACC isn't going to cease to exist. Now, it could very well eventually lose 2, 3, 4 of its most important schools. That could happen, but the ACC as an institution isn't going to meet the fate of the Pac-12, which at one point was obviously unthinkable, yet here we are. Elsewhere, Gonzaga and UCLA have agreed to a 2-year series in 24 and 25. It's not a home and home. The games will be in LA at the Intuit Dome, which is the new home of the Clippers, which hasn't even opened yet. It opens, I think, next month officially. And then Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. Love to see these schools play, of course. They've only played 9 times all time. Trivia time at home for those at home. What's Gonzaga's record all time against UCLA in the series? If you said 7-2, you'd be right. Yeah, Gonzaga's owned the Bruins there, but great to see those schools playing. I wish it was a home and home. Those games are scheduled in the midst of student breaks, which probably had something of an impact, but I've been up to the kennel, and it doesn't matter if the students are on break or not. That's a super tough ticket, and they will fill it up no matter what. UCLA is a little bit of a different story. I wish they were home and homes, so it goes. We have another home and home that's coming, though. UConn and Texas, which have done this now They've had 5 home and home series, a random arrangement, but happy to see it nonetheless. 2 big time programs. They will have a home and home starting this upcoming season. UConn will play in Austin in December of this year, December 8th. And then next year, UConn will host the Longhorns December 12th to 25. We love to see it. More home and homes between high majors as frequently as possible, please. UConn leads that series, by the way, if you're curious, all time 7-3. In fact, those teams met season ago at the Empire Classic. I was there at MSG. Other couple quick headlines before we bring in Branham. Brad Brownell, he signed a contract extension, folks. He's going to be, he's slated to be at Clemson through the 28-29 season. Good on him. Clemson coming off, of course, the Elite Eight run. He is the winningest coach in program history. 265 wins, the best coach Clemson's ever had. He has survived a half dozen hot seat seasons. It truly is historic stuff, folks. But good on him. He's not the only ACC coach that got a contract extension. Jeff Capel as well recently just got officially a new deal through 29-30. He took Pitt to the tournament 2 seasons ago, of course. Just missed out this last season, but nonetheless, he does get a new deal here. And as you well know, new deals don't ensure coaches last another 3-4 seasons, let alone 1 season, but they do get the coaches more money and do obviously bring more security for the coaches and the staffs that are trying to recruit moving forward, et cetera, et cetera. And then lastly, just a small note here. The NCAA announced, I think this was Friday, that Hinkle Fieldhouse will host the NIT championship in 25. We already knew it was hosting in 26 because if you missed it, the NCAA is going to have the D1, D2, and D3 men's tournament championships in 26, all in Indianapolis, in addition to Hinkle hosting the NIT in 26. That'll be the first time that's ever happened with all 4 of those in one city's limits, which is pretty awesome. And now it looks like Hinkle is going to be the host of the NIT moving forward here. There's still a lot of consternation about what the NIT is and will be moving forward because there is this new Fox event called The Crown, which is going to take Big 10 teams and Big 12 teams and Big East teams that don't make the NCAA tournament. And some of them are then going to go play in this Fox event out in Las Vegas, like 2.5 weeks after the conference tournament season. The prospect, I'm out on this thing in general, but it's going to pull teams away from the NIT. And so because of that, the viability and what the NIT is moving forward, there's still a lot of questions there. But we know that the NIT will be in Hinkle in 25 and 26. So just a couple of headlines there. But most of the stuff people are talking about in college basketball right now has to do with recruiting, with the top players. And the Peach Jam is the crown jewel of all of high school basketball in the summer. And who better to bring on than Travis Branham to talk about what transpired over the weekend and some of the players you need to know and his thoughts on some of the high risers there. So, Nada, let's take a quick break here, and then after the break, Travis will join me, and we'll get into the ins and outs and the nuances of the recruiting scene.
You hear that? It's the steady pulse of the world's game that's turning fans into family and sport into passion. You hear that? It's the heartbeat of American soccer. The USL on CBS Sports Network.
All right, here he is, Travis Branham, making his, I believe, his Eye on College Basketball podcast debut. Trav, is that correct?
I think that is, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to this. Without a doubt.
We had Finkelstein on last week. Shouts to Eric Bossio, by the way, who also does a tremendous job for us, and we'll get him on a pod soon enough. The 3 of you guys just absolutely all over it, leading our coverage when it comes to recruiting year-round, but July is such a highly important month. And I want to get to a little later in the show some of the names, 4-star guys or high risers, guys outside the top 10 that actually kind of hit your radar and folks should be knowing about. But I do want to start with the headline stuff, and that's obviously Peach Jam. So the Boozer twins, Caleb Wilson, another top 10 prospect, they won the Peach Jam on Sunday morning. They defeated Oakland Soldiers, who have AJ Dybantsa and Tyran Stokes. For the Nightrydas, it's their 3rd straight Peach Jam championship. They won the 15U 2 years ago. They won 16U last year, and they won 17U this year. I believe that is the first time that has ever been done by one outfit ever. So that is highly impressive. They won 71-62 on Sunday. Thoughts on, I don't know, the game, the run, anything, the floor is truly yours in terms of the performances there. If you want to get into anything with the Boozers, Wilson, or anyone else, take it away, my man.
Yeah, I think for all those that watch the game, the story of all of Peach Jam, and honestly, it's kind of the point that we knew this whole season was going to come down to, right? You had Nightrydas, Cameron Boozer, who is the best player currently in high school basketball, in my opinion, versus AJ Dybantsa, who is by far the best long-term prospect. And you got to see a lot of glimpses of that AJ throughout the whole course of the game. I mean, he was as exciting as it comes. He lived up to the billing, took over the game when he needed to, and really led a second half surge for the Oakland Soldiers, ultimately falling short. But that was the storyline, and we knew, again, these two teams were inevitably going to be matched up with the amount of talent that the Oakland Soldiers possessed, and then just the experience, the toughness, the organization of the Nightrydas that these kids have played together since about their 8th grade year. Cameron Boozer, not as exciting of a player as AJ Dybantsa. He's not going to be a guy that's going to break you down in isolations, hit those step back threes, beat guys and finish with authority at the rim. But like Cameron Boozer, he just does whatever it takes to win. And if you go back the last year, Cameron Boozer plays with Miami Columbus, whereas AJ Dybantsa played with Prolific Prep with an extremely talented squad. Cameron Boozer now is 3-0 over AJ Dybantsa in the last 8 or 9 months. So he's currently undefeated. As you said, 3 straight Peach Jam titles. But aside from those guys, I think it was a very fun and exciting weekend to watch Tyran, Stokes, and Brandon McCoy battle it out for the #1 spot in the class of 2026. Tyran Stokes is currently our #1 recruit at 24/7 Sports. Big, powerful, versatile wing that just can get a triple-double, and we saw that over the course of the weekend. Guy who can pass, see the floor, make shots. It's an area he's really improved. And then Brandon McCoy, if you go back and having watched him for the last 2 years, he was a kid that typically always played the right way, let the game come to him. But with this Arizona Unity team at Peach Jam, he took it upon himself. Like, he's like, I know I'm the best player on this team, and I'm going to play like that. So he really ramped up his aggressiveness, and he looked like that #1 player we previously had. And so that race is tightening up again. And then just overall, all-encompassing thoughts. It was an interesting week altogether. The kids are down there for 10 to 12 days, something we haven't seen since they did the COVID bubble a few years ago. And they only play just 1 game a day. On top of that, or I guess not on top of that, but with the college coaches, they only got to see these kids 2, maybe 3 times over the course of these 2 weekends, whereas historically, these kids were playing 2, sometimes 3 games a day. So you would have coaches getting an opportunity to evaluate who these targets are and get a better feel for their board. But this year, with the way the schedule kind of panned out, it was just a different year altogether, but exciting nonetheless.
Yeah, a couple notes from me on the schedule stuff, which a lot of our listeners, understandably, they don't care much on that, nor should they. But from a coaching perspective, if you're curious on, your favorite team, the staff, what they're doing, they were not a fan whatsoever with how the schedule played out. Now, a lot of this is the NBA directive is saying, listen, there are many factors why, but we deal with load management and all these injury concerns. And in our opinion, having studied this and talking to doctors, like, we do think it certainly doesn't help the fact that these high level 15, 16, 17-year-olds are often playing 2 or 3 times a day in extremely competitive environments at that age. And while they might not be getting injured at that point, we just think that if you can simply reduce that, it would only help. So I don't think that model will be changing moving forward, at least not on the EYBL side. But that combined with the new recruiting schedule this year did lead to some inconsistencies there. But if there's one thing I know every summer, it's that coaches cannot stop loving to bitch about the recruiting schedule. So whatever, there we are. The Boozer Dybantsa stuff is interesting to me, Travis, because I can't wait to a decade from now, no matter where their careers go, and they certainly both should be, I would think, successful NBA players when we look up in the year 2034, looking back to what happened on Sunday and the fact that Boozer did go 3-0, in less than a year's time against Dybantsa, and will he be the much better player? Who knows? But I wasn't on the ground, obviously, this past weekend. I was down in Philly, seeing some DMB shows in Camden, had a good time there. But I was there the previous weekend and sat with coaches there and got to see those guys play. And their talent is obvious, and there is definitely a faction of people that are still in on Boozer being the best player in high school right now, regardless of class, and still liking him more long term because he just, when it matters most, he just steps in and it's not just him, but obviously his brother's a tremendous talent as well. Maybe he might have a sneaky case. He's not rated in the top 10, but maybe he has a sneaky case to be moving into that conversation. But those guys, they always play so well and show up in the games that matter most. And that's a tremendous attribute to have from an early age, by the way. This has been long established here. And I think you'd agree and probably heard the same from either coaches or NBA evaluators you talk to. It's relentless. Like Cameron Boozer is attached to winning consistently and never having a bad game when he's playing certainly high level talent.
No question. I mean, we've already covered 3 Peach Jam championships in a row, never been done before, but you're also adding 3 consecutive state championships in the state of Florida, playing in an extremely competitive state. Their biggest rival, you could say, is Oak Ridge, a team that features 3 to 4 high major prospects every single year. And they are once again this year. And then you also add in 2 gold medals with Team USA, going back to the under-16s last year in 2023, and then playing on arguably the best youth national team we have ever seen this year and going out and just slaughtering the World Cup. So, yeah, as you said, these kids attached from winning from day one. I actually have been watching these kids since 8th grade, and just their mental approach, even back then, like it's always been on a different level. And you could obviously attribute that to Carlos Boozer and just the mindset he played with, that professional, competitive, focused energy that he always had on the court. I mean, Cameron obviously has it. That kid just looks like he wants to kill anybody that gets in his way of winning a potential another championship. So when this time next year, we could be talking about Cameron Boozer and Caden Boozer being the 2 most decorated players in high school basketball history, just having won 3 straight Peach Jam championships, 2 gold medals, potentially 4 consecutive state championships. And then, I mean, it's probably a very safe bet that these kids are also going to be named McDonald's All-Americans as well.
Seems like, Trav, it seems likely. Yeah, and just the fact that we got Dybantsa versus Boozer, even though many other players that were good in that game, Caleb Wilson included, who had a great defensive performance. It's good for college basketball that you have these high-profile anticipated matchups because there's carryover. We've seen it obviously with Cooper Flagg and players that precede them, but Dybantsa versus Boozer, to me, as someone who's gone to essentially every Peach Jam since 2011, that ranked in the top 3 or 4 of like the most high profile head-to-heads. Once upon a time you had Julius Randle and Wiggins play. I mean, there's been all sorts of stuff, and Bronny James being there a few years ago just because LeBron was in the gym. There was a lot of stuff, but I remember Ben Simmons, I remember Harry Giles. There's been some big ones, but that one seemed arguably as big as any that we've seen. Outside of those, well, one more quick on them, and then we can kind of go elsewhere at the Peach Jam. Recruitments on these players. Dybantsa's father told the media that he will make his decision in February. And Dybantsa previously told me, I think he reemphasized this last week to some reporters, he's going to publicly cut his list to 5 to 7 schools by the end of the month. So I guess within the next 9 days. And then Boozer, I said on last week's show with Finkelstein and GP, it seems like Florida, Miami, and Duke are really the 3 schools that are in that conversation. But with those 2 guys, with Caden Boozer, who it's my understanding they're going to wind up going to the same school, Cameron and Caden, and then Caleb Wilson as well. What can you do to inform our audience on where their recruitments stand right now and what updates might be coming other than what I just mentioned over the next few weeks?
Yeah, as you're alluding to, AJ Dybantsa's recruitment is going to take some time to play out. But the schools, when this list cut ultimately happens, schools I believe will probably make this list. You're talking Kentucky, Auburn. He's already taken a visit there. USC, he's already taken a visit to. It was to the old staff, but would probably bet on Eric Musselman continuing to try to pursue that with that past connection. BYU, do not sleep on the Cougars at all. Obviously, AJ Dybantsa just transferred to a high school named Utah Prep in the state of Utah. And everything I've gathered, I mean, sounds like BYU is going to be one of these schools that we quote unquote call a new blood moving forward. Alabama is going to be a player. I would imagine they are also going to make this list, as is Arkansas and SMU. And then, I mean, that's about 5 or 6 schools right there. So you could potentially add 1 or 2 in there if he does cut it to an ultimate 7. So no early leaders as of yet. So this one, we'll see once these visits take place. And then on the boozers, as you said, there is a top 3, Florida, Miami, and Duke. Miami, believe it or not, was considered the leader throughout much of this recruitment, but things sound to be tightening up. He's visited all 3 schools, and it sounds like the boozers may be done taking visits and could be going into decision-making mode over the next 2, maybe 3 months. Don't anticipate this dragging out beyond the early signing period for those 2. And then as for Caleb Wilson, his recruitment has been fairly fluid over the past few months. You had many of the blue bloods pursuing him. Dream school was Kentucky under the John Calipari era, and they pursued him very heavily while they were in Lexington, obviously now at Arkansas. And Arkansas is now believed to be the leader, whereas Georgia Tech, hometown team, is also very involved. Auburn, Tennessee, and some others continuing to keep an eye on him. But some of the other blue bloods that were on him, doesn't sound like Kentucky's going to be much of a factor anymore. Doesn't sound like North Carolina is going to be much of a factor anymore. And neither does it sound like Duke will be a factor. So his is really starting to take shape. And just one of the biggest conversation pieces on the recruiting trail for me this week is like, this time last year and in previous classes, we had a bit of a better feel of where kids will start ending up and the trickle-down effect of all of it. But this year, it seems to be a little bit more open. Some of these kids are taking their time, a little bit more time. Some are even wanting to wait till the spring to make their decisions. I don't see how that's going to be a very realistic possibility when we start talking about the transfer portal. But as of right now, like, seems like a lot of these kids have obviously like a top 4 or 5, but pegging this leaderboard and again, where that trickle down starts to play out, it's not been as easy as it has been in the past 2, 3, or even 4 years.
You mentioned Cal and Arkansas. They're in the top 3 for another highly ranked player that played at Peach Jam. Darius Acuff, the highest point guard in the class, top 5 player. He's going to make his decision public on Friday, this Friday at 5 Eastern on YouTube on the 247 Sports channel. What are the schools? Calipari, and there are 2 other schools. For those who might not be aware, how good is Darius Acuff? Who is he? And what schools is he debating between right now and before eventually letting everyone know where he's going on Friday?
Yeah, Darius Acuff, 6'2" point guard out of the state of Michigan, but he's been playing his high school basketball down in Bradenton, Florida for IMG Academy, plays for the Family AAU program. And when you look at the guards in the 2025 class, he is currently ranked as the top guard. A guy with a strong body. He's a really good athlete with great ball skills, just gets wherever he wants to on the court. And his calling card is just scoring the basketball. No matter the setting you've seen him in, whether it be USA basketball, he was a part of that U17 World Cup gold medal team, or with the family or with IMG. No matter the setting, the kid can just get a bucket whenever he wants to. Now, defensively, he's got a lot of room to grow there. His approach to that end is a bit lackluster, but he can defend when he wants to. I actually watched him at Peach Jam, and his team was up 15, 20 points. The other team made a big run, got back into it, and the other team actually had a chance at winning the game on a last-second shot, and Acuff's opponent, his matchup, tried to score on him, and Acuff just locked him down before blocking a pull-up 15-footer to send the game to overtime, and then Acuff was able to lead his team to a win. So just a dynamic 3-level scorer, dynamic playmaker with the ball in his hands that can just create a play at any given time. And on the recruiting trail, on the recruiting front, he is making this decision on Friday on 24/7 Sports. So I would encourage you guys to tune into that. But as far as where the leader and where things have been, what we've been hearing, it sounds like Arkansas for the past few weeks has been trending in the right direction here. Michigan
and Kansas are the other 2 public finalists for Acuff. be interesting to see where he goes. And yes, I caught him in person a few of his games at Peach Jam. Really, really fun talent. Obviously, if you're a top 5 player in a given class, you would project as a one and done. He may well do that. We'll see. We've had top 5, top 10 guards not become one and done players, obviously, in recent seasons. If he lands at the right spot and can develop the right way, he's got a lot of potential to be one of the more interesting and entertaining guards as a freshman when he gets into college basketball. Before we take a break, let's talk Nightrydas Soldiers Peach Jam folks. We had a commitment to Oklahoma, got a big time commitment from someone that was down there. Who else? What other doings? Kind of just a quickie notebook dump from you, Travis, on any other players that either made a big jump or that have notable recruitments, just Nike specific at the Peach Jam, guys that stood out to you in that setting over the past 10 days.
Yeah, Tunde Asufu, let's start with him. Team Why Not? A 6'4", 6'5" forward that can play the 3 and 4. Obviously doesn't have great size, but just an absolute beast. He's been on a monster tear all spring and summer long. Big, physical, really athletic, plays with an extremely high motor, and has really improved his skill set. And so he's one that I could see making a jump when we update these next rankings. His recruitment, USC, Arizona has been high atop that leaderboard for a while now, but do not count out other schools like Tennessee, Kentucky, and Kansas are continuing to pursue him. Another one that has blown up and continuing to rise, the most coveted guard outside of Darius Acuff right now is Caden Lewis. Plays for Team Durant. 6'1" guard that can just really score from all 3 levels, can play on and off the ball with that shot making ability. Another guy like Acuff that can just create in a pinch and make play, create offense, whether it be for himself or anybody else at any given time. And his recruitment has just blown up to a full blue blood recruitment. And it's going to take some time. Like when I was saying earlier, like getting a feel for this trickle down and where these kids stand, like he's going to be one we're going to be closely monitoring. There's no perceived leader right now, but UConn, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, every single blue blood is basically involved and in heavy pursuit right now. And then on top of him, CJ Ingram. When we go back to that scheduling topic, he was one that I think may have been impacted a little bit by just having one game a day on top of, I think, he plays for the Florida Rebels. I think they only got 2 opportunities all week in those 10 days to play in front of college coaches. And he is the son of Cornelius Ingram that played football and basketball at Florida, if you remember. And CJ is this big-time athlete, 16 years old still, just quit football to focus on basketball. And this high motor, big-time athlete, tough, gets downhill, great defender, explosive at the rim, and is continuing to improve his feel and skill set for the game, as you can imagine, for a guy that just started to really focus on basketball. He got an offer from Kansas while at Peach Jam. Other schools are trying to pursue, but it's going to be hard to pull him away, again, from his father's alma mater at Florida. But if anybody can do it, I'm never going to count out Kansas. Georgia, Mike White, Florida coach is also involved there. On top of that, see,
who else?
Make
popped?
sure I'm not missing anybody. Ryan Crotty. Can't forget him.
Yeah.
Arguably the best shooter in the entire country. His recruitment actually is pretty quiet to me, just in terms of schools that are involved. I would have imagined it probably grew beyond this. But the 3 schools right now that I'm hearing the most on is Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech, and Clemson right now. A 6'5" wing that is just an absolute sniper with a mullet and plays with just that kind of irrational confidence that you need for a guy that is limited athletically, but just with the way he shoots the basketball, he's always going to be a threat and bring a lot of gravitational force out on the court. And then lastly, Amari Evans played with New Heights Lightning, currently rated in the top 100. When you look at him, pops immediately with his length, his body type, his frame. Good athlete, and just knows how to play within the flow of an offense. Plays alongside Malik Thomas, and it's just a great complementary piece with the ability to make shots from 3. Is a great defender, and then can get downhill, and also a pretty good passer on top of that. And schools involved with him include Pittsburgh and Tennessee, Georgetown, Illinois, and some others are trying to get involved. But the 2 that we're looking at the closest right now is Pittsburgh, Jeff Capel, and Rick Barnes at Tennessee.
Jeff Capel just got a good contract extension. Maybe he can close that out. Those are players outside the top 10. Certainly some good names to know. Keep those in mind. Hit the rewind button if you want to listen back to what Travis just said. Keep an eye on those. And yeah, a variety of different kind of recruitments. But it's not just Nike guys. Obviously, there are good players on the Under Armour circuit, the Adidas circuit. I believe Travis attended the NBA Global Academy as well. So Nada, let's take a quick break. And then on the other side, just want to get a taste from Travis on a few other movers and shakers that have developed over in recent weeks here across the nation as we try and continue to build out, what the 2025 class is building toward and where the buzz is on some of these recruitments.
You hear that? It's the steady pulse of the world's game that's turning fans into family and sport into passion. You hear that? It's the heartbeat of American soccer. The USL on CBS Sports Network.
Yeah, I told Nod I wouldn't do the partners, but then I just did it out of habit there. Travis Branham is joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, appreciate you. If you've not yet subscribed to the YouTube CBS Sports College Basketball channel, please do so, as well as the 247 Sports channel, where Travis, Adam Finkelstein, Eric Bossy continually keep you updated. If you're into the recruiting stuff and you want to really get into it, the Eye on College Basketball podcast is not the place where we live in that space. However, Travis does a great job and has for a while, as he said earlier on the show. I mean, he's been following some of these elite prospects for 4 years now. You weren't not just obviously in North Augusta, South Carolina. You've been all over the place. Where else did you go in July specifically? Who have you seen? And even if you were not at some places, you obviously hear the buzz. Give us where you were, and then 8 to 10 guys, you can kind of, roll through them. Just guys who we should know about that intrigue you, or their recruitments are intriguing for one reason or another. I kind of want to do a grab bag for our listeners on just a variety of different kind of prospects, who they are, and where some of the most, interesting guys are coming from outside of the Nike circuit.
Yeah, basically took up residence in the city of Atlanta over the last 2 weeks. Started off at the NBA academies, like you said. After that, was able to swing through Under Armour for 2 days. And then a few days down at Peach Jam, and then finished it all up at 3SSB. So I actually got to see every single circuit for the most part over the last 14 days. The 3SSB was an All-American camp, so it was just the cream of the crop of the Adidas circuit. Starting with the NBA academies, I'll give you guys one player that you need to know right now, and that is Julius Halafanua, a 6'11", 260-pound big man out of New Zealand. Plays for the NBA Global Academy out of Australia, was a 2025 recruit, and he was back and forth, but he has finally decided that he's actually going to be reclassifying to 2024. So this recruitment is coming down to an end, and we will see him in college basketball next season. North Carolina, Ohio State have both been heavily involved, but Georgetown has really become a big factor in this recruitment. It sounds like they could actually be the leader, but still not counting out the Tar Heels. This one could be, aside from being a 2024 recruit, and classes starting in the next couple of weeks, this actually may take a little bit more time than I anticipated to play out. Not sure how it's all going to work. The dynamics seem to be very fluid, but it's a player from the NBA academies, top 50 type recruit, just very skilled, very smart big man that can really pass, rebounds his area, and can score in the post. At Under Armour, guy who I just absolutely love to watch. And I think it's going to be a very, very good player. He's good now, but I think he's going to be really good on down the line. And that is Jordan Scott. We got him ranked outside the top 50 right now. And he's down to final 3 schools: Michigan State, Virginia Tech, and Maryland. He's going to take visits to all 3 in the coming months before making his ultimate decision. Given the proximity, the connections to the school, I think Maryland's going to be tough to beat, but also not going to count out Michigan State. When I was watching Jordan, Michigan State was there all weekend long. And then just from his game perspective, 6'7" athletic wing that still looks like a baby, both in the face and just how thin he is. So, physically, he's going to continue maturing and developing on down the line, which is going to take his game to another level. Very smart, can dribble, pass, shoot, and a great feel for the game. On his AAU team, playing for the UA Rise, sometimes he's playing the 5 defensively, while on offense, he's asked to do absolutely everything for him. So I think here in a couple of years, once his body has a chance to catch up to the rest of his game, I think he could take a massive leap forward, potentially being on NBA Draft Watch, one of those guys we talk about entering the month of June. And then with the 3SSB circuit this past weekend, guys who really stood out, obviously Darren Peterson. He played on Friday night. When we talk about Cameron Boozer and AJ Dybantsa, I mean, Darren Peterson's basically in that conversation as well. I mean, you have a 1A, 1B, and arguably a 1C type recruit. Just a 6'4", 6'5" guard that can, with a very impressive physically developed body. He could play in college basketball. He could have played in college basketball a year ago, but he looks like he's ready to go on ahead and go on to the NBA just from a physical standpoint. But a 3-level scorer, great passer, great elite instincts. One of those guys, when you just watch, you're just like, man, that kid's just different. He's different than the rest of them. And then another one that has just skyrocketed this past 6 months, 8 months is Nate Ament. I've been watching him for over a year now. 6'9", versatile forward that has always just been a baby physically. And honestly, he still is. He still looks really young in the face. His frame hasn't even really started to fill out. But he's proven everybody wrong. Like, you go back a year ago or even 6 months ago and feel like, is this kid soft? And you watch and it's like he's still putting up 25 and 10 performances while other kids are way more physically developed than him. And it's a matter of just like, you just got to get stronger and learn how to handle contact a little bit better. But there's no softness to him. He actually has a little bit of a killer in him if you watch him long enough. And then just a 3-level scorer, keeps getting better every single time you see him. You see a different area of his game that just continues to improve. So this was honestly probably some of the most fun class I've watched in the past 4 years, not only just from a talent perspective with this top 3. We haven't seen a top 3 like this. I mean, since 2021 at the earliest, when you had Chet Holmgren and Paolo Banchero up at the top. But as far as the rest of the class, it's getting deeper, whereas not like, yes, it is. We have 3 special players at the top, but there's a lot of really, really good players beyond those guys. And other players just keep getting better. Like, maybe it was COVID. You can attribute a variety of potential factors to it. But in 2022, 2023, and 2024 classes, it was pretty stagnant. Like, you're always trying to search for a player that, like, who could we possibly replace this other player with, like, in the rank? Who can we move above this guy? Because this kid's just not getting even better. But that was like, it felt like that was the case for so many. Whereas this class, it's like, we updated the rankings at the beginning of this month, and we could update them again right now, and it would look so much more different than what it did just 2 weeks ago. And it's just, again, because these kids just keep getting better and keep developing, and they are, for the most part, all focused on the right things, and it's really paying off in a big way. So this class has been a lot of fun to cover and watch it, not only over these last 14 days, but over the last year.
You mentioned Ament. I would say, and you mentioned McCoy earlier. I would say those 2 players were the 2 guys among NBA scouts, like, aside from like the top 3, top 4 guys in the class, they were just the 2 guys that came up the most in terms of, like, I want to see them more. Here's the guy that you need to go see. Like, when I got to Adidas in Rock Hill, I guess now 2 weeks ago now, or not quite 2 weeks ago, but it was when I got there, like 3 different scouts within 30 minutes that I talked to were like, if you haven't seen Nate Ament. And actually there was a coach who listens to the show. I bet he's listening now. I think he coaches Hargrave. Apologies if I got that. I think he coaches at Hargrave. He was there. He's a dedicated podcast listener, and he was the first one when I got there. It was like, you want to see Nate Ament. Nate Ament, I told you right now. So a lot of buzz for Ament, top 10 player, of course. I wanted to ask you a question about the ranks, but before we do that, and before we get out of here, is there anyone, Travis, in 25 that's like outside the top 70, 75, but that you just kind of like as a prospect? If there's not, that's fine. I just wondered if there's just someone that might be recruited by an A10 Mountain West level kind of school, that either you think will eventually be a late riser, or maybe he's just that player's destined to be outside the top 75, but you personally have gotten to see him a few times and you like who he is for what he is and kind of the game he brings. If there's kind of like a diamond in the rough, so to speak.
Yeah, the diamond in the rough right now is Matthew Abel, a 6'5" guard / wing. It's been playing with Austin Rivers, Southeast Elite, and the secret is getting out on him. No way to put it. really long, athletic, shot-making wing that can get downhill, finish at the rim, and is also very good defensively. He was one of those guys that actually made the All-American camp after a late surge over the past 2 months. When you go back to the month of June, he was at the NBA Top 100 camp, and he really caught my eye there just with his 1-2 dribble pull-ups, making shots off the catch from three, and just his ability to just kind of fill his role both offensively and defensively. Never really tries to do too much out on the court. His recruitment was really being pursued heavily by the academic schools out there, specifically Northwestern and Stanford. Chris Collins was actually there over the weekend with 1 or maybe 2 assistants I saw with him. So they are trying to close this thing down. But when I talk around, this recruitment could actually pop here in the next 2 weeks in terms of more schools getting involved. UConn was there watching him actually. And so this could evolve into a blue blood recruitment rather quickly. And we currently actually don't have him ranked at all, which is absolutely crazy. But with, as you alluded to earlier, Jeremiah Fierce, kid at Nike, EYBL, committed and is actually to Oklahoma, is reclassifying for this upcoming season. So now we have a spot to fill in the 2025 rankings, and his, I think, unanimous. Matthew Abel is going to fill that spot, and as of right now, he is projecting to potentially be a top 50 prospect when it is all said and done. So there is your diamond in the rough that has just absolutely exploded, and all his performance and development is absolutely paying off right now.
Good note. Yeah, Jeremiah Fierce, big get for Porter Moser, Oklahoma. That's a good get. Last question, I'll get you out of here, and we'll wrap up the show. I think I want to tap into some curiosities, I think, of college basketball fans, people that follow the recruiting rankings. When it comes to building out the rankings, Travis, how does the crew at 247 go about doing that? And, well, sometimes the difference between a guy that you have 17 versus what you have 18, let alone someone you have at 88 versus 89, that can be so thin. Broadly speaking, and kind of in a simple way for our listeners, how do you go about this thankless task that frankly is impossible to obviously always get right, but nevertheless you guys do a great job at doing it and assembling it? But what's kind of in a nutshell, what's your process in getting that done?
Yeah, it's extremely difficult. As you said, you can never get it fully right, but you could do it a couple different ways. The way we do it is blending the best players now and who also projects long-term. So if you were to actually do a ranking of who are the best players right now, like as I said, it would be hard not to rank Cameron Boozer number 1. But when you have to blend the two of who's the best players now and who's going to be the best players in 3, 4, 5 years and have the best long-term NBA careers, and then that's where it gets a lot of the debate starts to happen. And so that's where you'll get the AJ Dybantsa at number 1 with Cameron Boozer, who's also going to be a heck of a professional behind him. So when you start getting into, like you said, who's better between the 17 and 18 prospect, you're often splitting hairs. Honestly, you're splitting hairs sometimes from the number 6 prospect all the way down to like the number 25 prospect. You can make a case in any sort of way. So usually the tip of the hat will go to players that are projecting better in the long term, as long as they are producing. Now, if you are an extremely talented player, like we'll see every single year, but you haven't really produced, it gets really difficult. And that's honestly where many of the times we get bit the most, where we'll have a player ranked in the back end 100 solely off of talent and talent alone. And you look at the numbers that they've done throughout their high school careers, and it's not eye-popping by any means. You often leave the gym wanting so much more out of them as a player. And that's where we get handcuffed the most in terms of we are only held to evaluations of these players from the ages of 14 to basically 18 years old. And then we're basically cut off. We get judged off of what we see when they leave when they're 17 and 18 years old. And so those players obviously continue to mature and develop and grow up and become men. And that's where you'll see those guys really skyrocket late or into their freshman years. They get on campus, they get in that college weight room, and things just change quickly for them. But just from the philosophy standpoint, at the top, you're mixing a blend of NBA long-term potential, who's going to have the best careers with current best producers. And then I would say as you get into the 25 to 50, 50 to 75 range, you really are looking at who's going to be the best, most impactful college basketball players more than anything. And you're looking at program impacts. And obviously that starts to you get into some debates in terms of fitting at that point of, this player chose this school. Are they a better fit? Are they as good of a fit as maybe this player who could overachieve at a different school? Every single year, it seems that Matt Painter in Purdue makes us look bad because he just has a way of just getting kids to just overachieve in his program. And so you start taking those things into consideration. So it's a lot of variables that you're always trying to shuffle. And then just the way we come down to it is we have a team of 5 people and we all just basically debate it out. But Adam Finkelstein heads it up. So whenever there's basically a stalemate that happens, Fink gets to take charge and make the call and bear the burden of responsibility if it ever backfires.
Fair enough. Good stuff. Good insight. Travis Branham, a really great debut appearance here. And if you guys and gals are digging the recruiting stuff, please check out 247 Sports. Obviously, they are our partner when it comes to all this stuff, and they do a great job. Recruiting rankings updated semi-frequently. Do we know when the next refresh on the 25 class will be? Is this going to be something like early August, or might it wait until deeper in the fall?
I actually do not know. We haven't had that conversation yet. Historically, it does come in the early summertime around August after the EYBL Peach Jam and everything wraps up in the month of July. And then you'll get a couple of different camps and events in the month of August. So we'll go to a couple of those, and then we'll usually reconvene and give it a good refresh. So haven't had the conversation yet, but would imagine it comes in the next month or two.
All right, good deal. Travis Branham, you can follow him on Twitter at Travis Branham. It's BRANHAM, and then an underscore at the end of that, by the way. So you got to fill that in all the way. Travis, appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much, man. And for everyone listening and watching, thank you for doing so. We got summer shoot-around episodes coming. Plenty of episodes. The feed's actually going to be busier over the next month plus than it has been in recent weeks here, so keep an eye on that. We'll be previewing all the top 10 teams at GP's top 25 and 1. Then we'll do a handful of other notable teams involved in that, and we will be auctioning off. We're going to do 15 shoot-around episodes this season. The 15th team will be the team whose fan base donates the most money to charity. You'll have details on that soon, probably, hopefully, by next week. So keep that in mind. Until then, thanks for listening. Take care. Travis, appreciate you. And we'll talk to you again soon on the Eye on College Basketball podcast.